the more important the office becomes. But Democrats are now thinking that they can use the Roy Moore playbook against Donald Trump. So Tom Perez over at the DNC, he says that Trump isn't just a bad president, he's the worst president in American history.
What do you say to progressives? You want to have a message that's not just anti-Trump, which I'm guessing also means it's not just about impeachment. What do you tell those in the Democratic base that says, no, Mr. Chairman, they do want to talk impeachment? What do you say to them?
Well, I say to them, here's where we agree. This is the worst president perhaps in American history. This tax way to wealthy people and very large corporations that don't need it is an abomination.
The worst president in American history? The worst president? We've had presidents like James Buchanan. We can stop him here. He's an idiot. We've had presidents like James Buchanan. We've had presidents like Andrew Johnson, who was impeached. We've had presidents like LBJ, who's a disastrous president. We've had presidents like Woodrow Wilson, another disastrous president. We've had Jimmy Carter be our president. Like there are a lot of really bad presidents. President Obama's on that list. By the way, I don't think Obama's the worst president in American history. I think Obama's top 5 bad, but I don't think he's the worst president in American history. There are a lot of presidents who have been more damaging than President Obama. But the idea that Donald Trump is the worst president after a year, what's he done that makes him the worst president in American history? I don't think he's been a great president by any stretch of the imagination. If I had to grade him now, I'd give him about a C-. I like some of the things that he's done. I think he's undercut that with a lot of his rhetoric. I think if he would stop tweeting and stop talking, he'd be a B- president. But the idea that he's the worst president in American history, this is Democrats getting ahead of themselves. And if they think that they're going to be able to defeat Trump just by shouting at him, they tried that in the last election cycle, and it did not work. You see, Bernie Sanders is doing this too. He's now accusing Trump of having severe emotional problems. Like, why exactly a kook old socialist, a nutcase who honeymooned in the USSR and goes around talking about how we need to pay for everyone's college, make college free, without any plan to pay for it, how he's talking about the serious emotional problems of Donald Trump is beyond me.
You got a president who has been accused by many, many women of harassment, to say the least. This is a guy who was on a tape seen by everybody in America, essentially bragging about his sexual assault of women. Do I think under those considerations of Al Franken resign, do I think the president should resign? I do. Do I think he will? I don't. But yes, I do think he should resign.
He should resign because he has severe emotional... The Democrats who are pushing this hard, that Trump should resign, that he has to go, there could be a backlash here to the overreach. There really could. And when I say backlash to the overreach, I'm talking also about the media overreach here, because the media overreach here is pretty astonishing. I mean, the level of media overreach is pretty insane. So I want to show you some of the things the media have been saying about this Alabama race, because they're truly quite nuts. So first of all, I'll start with this tweet that just came out. This is about Trump, not the Alabama race. David Leonhardt, who is a pretty good reporter over at the New York Times, or can be from time to time, he says that after we published a list of Trump lies this summer, some of his supporters asked us to compare Trump to other presidents. We've done so and just published the results. And there's a chart. It shows Trump has lied 103 times in his first year. It says in his first 10 months, Trump told nearly 6 times as many falsehoods as Obama did during his entire presidency. It says Obama only told 18 lies his entire presidency. And then you wonder why people don't trust the media? You wonder why when the media go berserk, the media don't pay any attention to it? It's because of stupidities like this. You wonder why Trump says fake news and everybody sort of nods along? It's because that's fake news. If you think President Obama only told 18 lies his entire presidency, that's insipid. It's absurd. If you want to say he's a bigger liar than Obama, you can probably make a statistical case for it. But to say that in 8 years, Obama told 18 lies, that he only told a lie like twice a year, you have got to be kidding me. You have got to be kidding me that Trump has told 103? That is not a real statistic in any sense. And you can see that the media are more than happy to tear Trump down. There is a backlash to that. That backlash only applies to Trump, by the way. It didn't help Roy Moore very much in Alabama. It may have helped him a little bit, but not enough. It doesn't help Republicans in Virginia. The anti-media line only helps with the president because the president really does have is really receiving the brunt of media criticism. But if Roy Moore says the media is coming after me, and what it turns out is that there are some pretty significant allegations against him, that just doesn't wash. That said, the media obviously are attempting to tear down Trump. So the Democrats who think that Roy Moore is the beginning of the end for Trump, no. I mean, Scott Brown won a Senate seat, Ted Kennedy's old Senate seat in Massachusetts. Barack Obama was reelected to the presidency 2 years later. So the idea that Trump is done as president is just foolish, especially if the media continue to go crazy over Trump as much as they have. So, for example, last night, we found out that Omarosa, who was a contestant on The Apprentice and then was in the White House for nearly a year, she had left the White House. There was a story by April Ryan, who really hates Omarosa, suggesting that Omarosa had been forcibly ejected by Secret Service from the White House. Secret Service denied this, but you can see the chortling on CNN over what appears to have been fake news.
We're all going to have this conversation about the black female vote in Alabama, but Angela Rye and Simone Sanders, come on in. We're talking obviously about Omarosa and I mean, listening to April's story and how she was trying to get into the residence, and we all know that's a no-no. Simone, did you ever have any issues or conversations with Omarosa? Any stories to tell?
Look, much like everyone on this panel, we all know Omarosa, and yes, I've had a run-in with her at the National Association of Black Journalists Convention this summer. And I think what's important to note here is that Omarosa has had a particular brand and style of the way she has operated within the White House, and she likes controversy and high drama. This White House likes controversy and high drama. And so it was only up until recently, apparently, that the White House decided that this has gone too far where Omarosa is concerned, and she had to be removed. But absolutely, she accosted me in the corner at a National Association of Black Journalists convention in full display in the lobby of a hotel where everyone could see with the former president. In the restaurant. Yeah. And so this is I'm not shocked that this happened.
And that same weekend, she came and saddled up next to me trying to do something, again, with the president, the former president of the NABJ, who she's friends with, to stir up some controversy. And we also know, we remember that famous tape with Ed Gordon, where I guess it was Friday, where she was battling it out on the stage. It was very unladylike. It was very, it was ugly.
But the White House also, and absolutely, but the White House condoned this. And so, while again, I'm no fan of Omarosa, I will say that I find it interesting that the high drama high profile African American individual in the White House is no longer to be tolerated. But there are lots of other problematic high drama individuals that still have jobs.
Brooke, go ahead, Angela. I want to hear you, and then I do want to talk about the black vote in Alabama.
I want to talk about the black vote too, but Brooke, I'm going to do what you can't do, and what April and Simone are too good of people to do, and that's just going to be petty for a minute. Ah!
Oh, Angela.
Bye,
Angela.
girl.
Oh,
bye.
Angela.
We did it already on the podcast, April, but bye, honey. You have never represented the community. You are skin folk. We don't own you like Zora. Goodbye. Good riddance. Goodbye. Deuces.
Angela,
Ouch.
Angela, you know I have much love for you, but you know what? I don't delight in anyone's demise.
I'm not delighting in her demise. I wish her the best, but
I will say no. Again, I don't think. I can just speak for myself and maybe some other folks weren't necessarily sad to see Omarosa go today. No, again.
Okay, you can see all of the anchors chortling and laughing. Oh, look, somebody got fired. Black woman got fired from the Trump administration, and she deserves to go. They're not the only ones. Robin Roberts this morning on Good Morning America, she actually said bye, Felicia, about Omarosa. She goes, bye, Felicia, right before she goes to break. I mean, like the chortling over Omarosa is really kind of galling. And we're getting the same routine from MSNBC's Chris Matthews. Trump's on the ropes. She just resigned. She just leave. I get up in the morning, come out of the show, come on here, my suit's all wrinkled. Don't even own an iron. What do I need an iron for? I just come in here. I don't even go to sleep in a bed. I just sleep in this chair with the rolling wheels on the bottom. They roll me over. They wake me up and they say, go, boom, hardball, go, Chris Matthews, go.
Do you think we'd be better off if this president simply resigned after all this concern about his behavior in the past and his current comments and turned it over to Vice President Pence? Would we be better off?
You know what?
Tough question, but I'd love an answer from you.
I did not want to see this president go in place. I favor these investigations that people are talking about, and certainly the investigation we're seeing on Russia. And that's the only way we're going to be able to see a change, is if the facts come out and there is, in fact, a reason through Congress for some kind of proceeding. And right now, that's what we have to let happen. But at the same time, we cannot let go. And this is the message we heard from Alabama and Virginia, this economic message of people that want us to simply focus on these bread and butter issues and to stand up for them every step of the way.
Okay, so this idea that he's going to resign and that we're 1 second away from resignation, it's one of the reasons why the Democrats have placed so much heavy burden on the Russia investigation. They think that they're 5 seconds away from impeaching Trump. Bret Stephens has an interesting column over at the New York Times. Stephens, of course, is maybe the last remaining quote-unquote never-Trumper. So one of the distinctions that people have been making, one of the labels people have been using wrongly, in the same way that neoconservative came to mean anyone who's for the Iraq War, even though neoconservative originally meant a bunch of people who were Marxists who became conservative when they were disillusioned by leftism. It now became, anyone who backed the Iraq War. The term never-Trumper has been applied to a bunch of people who are not, quote-unquote, never-Trump, who don't spend their days trying to take down Trump. So I was never Trump during the election cycle, meaning I didn't vote for the president in the general election or in the primary. But once he was the president, that no longer applies, right? Never-Trump just meant my vote. It didn't mean my support. It didn't mean my belief that he could change. It didn't mean my support for his various policies. There are a few people who are quote-unquote never Trump who've sort of maintained this position that nothing Trump does can ever be right. Bret Stephens seems to be one of them over at the New York Times. And I like a lot of Bret's work, but that's the position that he's taken. But he has a column today where he says that Democrats are making a huge mistake. If they think that Trump is just going to be ousted because they don't like him or because his approval rating is 35%, they're neglecting the fact that the economy is still booming under President Trump. They're neglecting the fact that a solid tax cut will help the economy, that we had 3.3% GDP growth in the last quarter, that the stock market is at record highs. He says with the economy good, if Trump could shut his mouth for 5 seconds, he'd win re-election, and he could do so relatively easily because his governance has not been nearly as controversial or as difficult as has been the rhetoric that has surrounded him. And he's exactly right about that. So the only person who can really get Trump in trouble and continue to get Trump in trouble is Trump. One of the ways he could do that is theoretically by firing Robert Mueller. Now, as I mentioned yesterday, there is this text message that was sent from a member of the Mueller team to his mistress. He was married to his mistress, in which he talked about having an insurance policy against Trump winning in August of 2016. It's not clear what that meant, but it's pretty clear that the Mueller investigation is compromised to a significant degree. That doesn't mean that Trump has the political wherewithal to actually fire Robert Mueller. And he's going to have a tough time doing it, considering that his Justice Department doesn't want him to do it. Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, he came out yesterday in testimony and said that he had not seen good cause for Trump to fire Mueller at this point.
In testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee, you said that you would only fire Special Counsel Mueller for good cause, and that you had not seen any yet. Several months have passed since then. Have you seen good cause to fire Special Counsel Mueller?
No.
Thank you. If you were ordered today to fire Mr. Mueller, what would you do?
As I've explained previously, I would follow the regulation. If there were good cause, I would act. If there were no good cause, I would not.
And you've seen no good cause so far?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so he's basically saying that if Trump wants to fire Mueller, he's going to have to do it himself. Now, as I'll explain later, Trump does have the power to fire Mueller. He has an enormous amount of discretion. In fact, he could actually call up Mueller right now, not just fire Mueller. He could call up Mueller now and say, I want you to drop this investigation. This investigation is over. Right? He could actually just do that. He wouldn't even have to fire him. He could call him up and order him to drop the investigation. And then if Mueller refused, then he could fire him. I'll explain that a little bit later in the big idea. But the thing that is really important to notice here is that the Democrats are hanging their hat on an investigation that is already fatally compromised, whether or not Trump fires Mueller. So the Roy Moore is out, therefore Donald Trump is done. That line is not going to wash. It's not going to play. That's not how this stuff works, right? Republicans thought that after Ken Starr, Clinton was done, he left office with a 66% approval rating. He picked up seats in 1998 elections. And Al Gore should have won the 2000 election if he hadn't been one of the worst candidates ever, if he hadn't actually been a walking block of wood. Okay, so I now want to turn to what is, to me, one of the more insane pieces I have seen recently. The social left wants to have it both ways. On the one hand, they want to say that sexual promiscuity and sexual liberation is a grand and glorious thing for everyone involved. On the other hand, they want to say that everyone's subjective perception of sexual conduct must be taken seriously. Well, you can't have it both ways. Either sex is generally a good so long as it is quote-unquote consensual, and they never define exactly what level of consent is necessary because sometimes they say Monica Lewinsky could consent, sometimes they say she couldn't. Sometimes they say 13-year-old girls can consent, sometimes they say they can't. But in any case, the left has this weird ethos where they know bad when they see it. They have a Potter Stewart ethic with regard to that. Potter Stewart's the guy who said that he couldn't define pornography, but he knew it when he saw it. The left has that with regard to sexual ethics more broadly. So evidence of this, Zoe Heller is a columnist for The New Yorker, and she writes an entire piece called In Defense of Adulterers. They talk about how adultery is natural and normal and probably good. So she starts off by talking about how our increasingly licentious behavior has not been reflected in more tolerant public attitudes toward infidelity. We've become considerably more relaxed about premarital sex, gay sex, and interracial sex, but our disapproval of extramarital sex has been largely unaffected by our growing propensity to engage in it. We're eating forbidden apples more hungrily than ever, but we slap ourselves with every bite. According to a 2017 Gallup poll, Americans deplore adultery at much higher rates than they do abortion, animal testing, or euthanasia. Now, by the way, I think adultery is less of a sin than abortion because murder outranks adultery.